Let's talk matchups. Wisconsin's offense against USC's defense, Wisconsin's defense against USC's offense. What can they exploit? Where might they be in trouble? On Wisconsin, let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. As I notice my camera is out of focus for some reason, but we're going to keep piling through it. I'm sure it'll fix itself. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. A big episode today. We got Curtis Holland jumping back on the show, playmaker. We're talking USC, Wisconsin. You went back and watched all of the USC-Michigan game. You obviously went back and watched the Wisconsin-Alabama game. I want to start with USC's defense. What did you see from USC defensively in their game against Michigan?
So, yeah, I had the benefit of being able to watch the all 22 coaches film of both our last game versus Alabama and, Michigan's game against USC. And USC defensively, watching them play, I'll say this: they're a good team. They're definitely improved from last season. They're not, completely out of position. They're not just whiffing on tackles. They're not, running the wrong defense and not matching up properly. They're definitely an improved team. That said, watching them, there wasn't a lot about their defense that was anything out of the realm of what we would normally see on just a regular Big Ten West team. I think when you look at their defense, sort of the way they play, the strength of that unit is definitely their secondary. And they're honestly built very similar to how we're built. I would say that if we're looking at the defense, they probably have a better pass rush than we do. I think they got some, maybe bigger, stronger dudes up the middle, especially on the D line than we do. Barry Alexander, he doesn't play as much, but he is every bit a freak as he was advertised coming into UGA. There are other two starting nose guards who, unfortunately, I don't have their names in front of me, but they played well too. And they did a good job of getting pressure and beating Michigan's tackles. But after that, they don't have as much depth as I think we do, especially in the secondary and in the linebackers. Once they got tired, Michigan was able to get a lot of push and be able to do a lot of what they wanted to do in the run game. And in full disclosure, watching Michigan on the other side of that game, this is not last year's Michigan at all. That 3-year run of them having Joe Moore winning lines, everybody from that group is gone. The top 6 linemen on Michigan left last year. And so these are all new guys and transfers, and it is very clearly obvious. In fact, I'll go so far as to say that Wisconsin has a better offensive line than Michigan right now. And that became obvious to me watching the Alabama film. Ironically enough, I think our best performance as an offensive line came against Alabama. Who would have thought that was the case, especially if you looked at the score, which is a lot of different things that went into that. But overall, I think that what Wisconsin will be able to do is get a lot of push in the run game, specifically going sideline to sideline, wide zone, stretch, mid zone. I think we'll see a lot of success there. I don't know how much success we'll have in power. I'm still a little shell-shocked trying to run power against Alabama and their D tackles giving up 0 in that space. But I do think we're going to be able to get a lot of push in the run game. I think our game plan can be very similar to what Michigan wanted to do. But the difference is I think we have a much better pass offense than Michigan has, even with Braedyn Locke. Watching Orji play last week, you would have thought it was the arm of Deacon Hill on the body of Jackson Aker. He did not play well. Awesome. And the fact that Michigan won that game running 53 times, throwing 12 passes for 32 yards, and then you got people on the outside trying to say, oh, USC looks very improved. They're physical. It's like, how do you go and lose to a team that literally did one thing the whole game, right? That was crazy to me to watch. And so I think we can replicate a lot of Michigan's game plan. And the benefit for us coming into that game is that now USC is beat up. And they took a lot of hits in that game.
Yeah, USC's beat up. Wisconsin's coming off a bye. I agree. Michigan threw for 32 yards and won the game. I had a point in my show, I think it was yesterday, Curtis, and I said, we're going to kind of learn a couple things about this team this week. We have to be able to run the ball. And if we can't run the ball this week against USC, I'm not sure we're going to be a running team this year. You and I have talked about this. You have to be able to lean on the run. I think so far, it statistically hasn't been that great, but I agree with you. I thought the offense line was pretty good against Bama. I think they're going to be able to run against USC. Let me ask you this, though, because I kind of think they need to let Braedyn Locke throw on first down a little bit. They have to let him get some looks. And traditionally, under Paul Chris last couple of years, it felt like it was run, pass. There was a lot of passing in obvious passing situations. Thoughts on Braedyn Locke and letting him maybe open it up a little bit more early in downs that are a little more advantageous to him?
So I hear what you're saying, but I don't know if I necessarily agree, at least early in the game. Um, this is of this season, Braedyn Locke's first start. I
Mhm.
got to work him into the game. And because it's very much true that USC's pass defense is good. They do have good corners. They do cover well, right? Their zone schemes are interesting. They had some really interesting zone blitzes that didn't make a lot of sense watching Michigan. But Michigan's offense didn't make a lot of sense watching Michigan. So, I don't know what was going on there. But in terms of they're playing man, like they did a pretty good job of staying on Michigan's receivers. They did leave some guys open. There will be opportunities to be had. But one of the big issues we had against Alabama, and one of the big issues that led to a lot of the sacks Locke had in Alabama, was not because Locke didn't know what he was doing or that he was scared. If you watch the All-22, our receivers were locked down whenever Alabama went to man, and I don't care who it was: Tretch, Pauling, Brooks, Green, Williams, everybody. They were just shut off. I mean, and Tretch even got locked down by a linebacker on a couple plays. I mean, that's how athletic Alabama was. USC is not that, but they're damn good too. Their top
Mhm.
corners, I think, will be able to hang with our receivers with really not a ton of stress. And so if we try to start throwing around early, we're going to get ourselves behind the sticks. Again, I think the strength for us in this game is our offensive line. I 100%, having watched both films, am convinced we have a much better line than Michigan does. And again, if you don't believe me, go back and watch the film. It's obvious. When we ran on Alabama, we were getting to the second level, especially when we ran outside zone or stretch. We were getting the second level. We were getting open looks. Our issues were, I don't know how strong our running game is with our running backs right now. I
Mhm.
don't know how well Ches is playing. He seems like he's either in his head or he's, a guy who's been injured, season-ending injuries, 3 years straight. That's what he's running like. Now, Tawi's a great short yardage back. The fourth down we had against Alabama was because their middle linebacker came in unblocked. That was a weird play. I don't know how we set that up. Formationally, it didn't really make sense from us how we were blocking that play. I digress. He's a great short yardage back. I think we'll be able to get short yardage pretty easily in this game, if I'm being fully honest, especially because we'll play a little bit more spread out than Michigan. Michigan kept everything kind of gummed up in the center, made it really hard to get short yardage for them. I don't think that'll necessarily be the same for us. But the strength of our team is going to be our offensive line in running the ball. And I think where Locke will get more involved is sort of that RPO play action game. Not necessarily RPO to run. There may be one or two instances where it's just that's the right play to do, and he's got to run and slide, and it's not really a high risk of him getting hit, going back to the point of him getting injured. But I think
Mhm.
RPO play action game where it's a quick pull and a slant pass, or a quick pull and a free access throw, or a quick pull and a look to a seam route, maybe the safety comes down and run support. Those are where I think we're going to see Locke getting more involved and being a bigger factor on this offense.
Yeah, and I think with the RPO action, I think you're right. Like it's going to be more of that RPO to throw the slant or to find a read. I still think at some point in the game you're going to want to see him keep it once, just because they're going to start crashing down really heavily, and he's going to have an easy 8 yards if he wants it,
Mhm.
and he's going to be able to slide and from that point on, that puts a little bit of that hesitation in the USC defensive player, the edge player, the linebacker, whoever it is. I think he needs to be able to do that. I just don't think you're going to lean on it, like you said, as much with Tyler
No,
and Dyke, but. Yeah, I hear you. I think it's a good point. Like, you don't want to get too far away from your strength, and then suddenly you're behind the sticks, and then you have to throw. Oh,
I mean,
I
I'll say this, like, again, watching the first 3 games, listening to Fickle's press conferences, and kind of seeing how our team looks right now, this is as much a Paul Chryst Wisconsin team as I've ever seen. And it has
yeah.
to be. That's the strength of this team. Fickle's not lying when he says there's something with the running attack in the offensive line. He's not lying when he says we're a step or two behind big runs. I mean, there was a couple plays against Bama where if we didn't either get tripped up or we made the cut slightly sooner, there was 30, 40 yards of grass. Now, I don't know if we could take it to the house because, I mean, Bama's defense just had so much speed everywhere. But it would have been a different game. And, we were talking before the show. I never thought I was going to say this kind of coming into the season, but man, if we had Braylon Allen back there, it would have been a
No,
different game on last Saturday.
I
And I'm
know we
telling you,
talked
like,
about it.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now, if we had Braylon Allen, especially against this team coming up, I'd be picking us to win 100%. I wouldn't even think twice about it, especially after last week.
Well, you're dead on because there was a run. Everyone looks at that Ches run off the left side where he fumbled the ball. He had 30 something yards. There was a run earlier in that game up the middle where he just gets tripped up. I think it was a backside safety coming across, but he had another. If he makes that another 30, 40 yard gasher, they gashed Alabama a couple times from a blocking scheme standpoint. They had creases opened up. Let me ask you this: which running back do you want to see more of in this game? Let's say I think we both agree Ches has not been efficient enough to continue garnering 70% of the workload. Do you want to see more Tywee? Do you want to see more Dupree? Do you want to see more Yak? Is it a combination of those three? What's the answer there?
Yeah, I honestly I have no idea. And it's because I haven't really seen the freshmen actually do really anything. I mean, most of their runs have been end of game, 2, 3 yards, just kind of like everybody knows they're gonna run, they're running into nothing, right? I mean, that's kind of when you've seen them. I don't know what they've looked like in practice or what kind of things they've done. And it's tough for me to say, yeah, I want to see them because I just don't know what they are yet. I guess in theory, this feels like a game where Dylan Jones could have a really good game because he's a one cut and up the field kind of guy. And like for example, if we had that like the way Braylon runs or the way Melvin ran, that kind of running action from our running backs, that's what I think would really hurt USC, especially watching Michigan last week. Now, granted, they were playing a little bit tighter to the box, so there was some big run plays to be had. Once you get past the second level, there's no one there. I don't know if that'll be the case this week, just off how we play our offense spread out a little bit more. Safeties tend to be more back. But again, like being able to knife and get upfield is going to be what we want to see. To be totally honest, for me, I want to see the best version of Ches because we've seen better versions of Ches over the last 3 years. And if he plays like what we've seen from him in the past, he's the running back I want in there because he makes one decision, cuts up the field, and gets vertical. Especially the first year we had him. I mean, he was getting 9, 10 yards against a team like a Penn State because he's making one cut, hugging the line, and getting upfield. And if he plays like that, he's going to have a really good game. I know he can do it. Will he? I have no idea. That's where it goes back to you got to have honest conversations with your running back room and say, hey, look, at the end of the day, like, look, Ches, we love you, but like, we're not. This isn't a charity game. Like, if you're not performing, we got to get these other guys in here. I think you see a little bit more Yak this week because I think he has a little bit more of that up the field and go.
Yeah,
and if the freshmen, showed out this week in camp and are really earning their spots as guys who need to play this season, I think at this point, going with I don't even think red shirts matter anymore. I think with the transfer portal and NIL, I think you kind of just got to play guys. If they're the guy, you got to play them. And I think that's what we need to do. So if they're performing in practice, if they're performing and making some things happen, behind the curtain, then absolutely you want to see them. But it's tough for me to say that because I just don't know.
Yeah, and on your last point, 100% agree. Like, red shirt doesn't even matter anymore. Like, if a guy's good enough, you play him, period. And quite frankly, even if he's not good enough, you might need to play him to let him know you're in the plans. Don't think about the portal. Like, if you think he's on the borderline, you almost need to find reps for him. So I 100% agree there. All right, we're going to take a quick break, friends of the show. We're going to come back. That was Wisconsin's offense against USC's defense. We're going to come back and talk about Wisconsin's defense against USC's offense. And I'm going to ask Curtis, how did they get pressure on Miller Moss? Because Michigan did, but we don't got that defensive line. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Roy. Roy is a great new platform we talked about. It is an opportunity to get involved as a fan in NIL. Every week, we're going to be picking our Roy Player of the Year, Player of the Week. Roy stands for Return on You. Coming off a bye week, we're not going to be doing that this week, but we're going to be giving you an opportunity to contribute to your favorite player. And if every person contributes $10 here, $10 there, you can really make a big deal for someone who had a great week. Maybe week 1, it would have been, maybe it's a Will Pauling, whatever it is. Week 2, maybe it's a defensive player, Hunter Wohler. Week 3, maybe it would have been Christian Allegro or Tackett Curtis coming in and playing pretty well in relief. That's what Roy allows you to do. Contribute to athletes, help them stay on the roster, help show your appreciation for what they do for the program. Plus, you get access to digital exclusive content over at Roy. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with Roy. Use code LOCKEDON to enter and win $5,000 in cash. Download Roy for iOS and Android. Today's episode is also brought to you by our good friends over at LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the #1 hiring platform in the world. Like, if you need to find the right talent as a hiring manager, as a business, as a company, or if you're trying to find the right job, go over to LinkedIn.com. They have screening tools to help get rid of people who have no business applying for your job. That saves you time. That saves them time. That saves the company time. Time saves money. Get the right person in your door the first time with screening tools with the largest professional network over at LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. You're not going to beat it. The best professional networking marketing platform out there. It's something I use. My company uses linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. All right, let's get back into this conversation with Curtis. Let's talk a little bit about Wisconsin's defense against USC's offense. Thoughts on what you saw from USC's offense, Miller Moss, the receivers, the offensive line against Michigan?
Yeah, so watching USC's offense, it's clear to me that the strength of this team is their wide receivers. I mean, they have 3 or 4 guys that could easily be NFL draft picks in that wide receiver group. Obviously, Zachariah Branch, to me, it was pretty clear he's their best player. And if you get him in space, you have to get him down. Like it doesn't matter. Keep him underneath. They don't run him deep a lot. So if you can keep him underneath you, then we're going to be in good situations. And then their outside guys, I mean, they're solid. They'll make plays when they have the opportunities to make them, but they're not what we saw from Alabama. With that, I'm 100% confident in saying. I mean, they don't have a Ryan Williams. You know, the way that Alabama's receivers played us, they were physical, they were aggressive, they were twitchy, they could get open. They were physical off the route, like when you had them deep and that touchdown that Hallman gave up. There was a lot of physicality on that, kind of a let him play moment, but that's why he scored that touchdown, and they were just significantly more dynamic than what I saw at USC. The funny thing watching USC's receivers against Michigan is, off season, people were talking about, does USC have physicality? Can they match the intensity of the Big Ten? It kind of felt like they came into that game expecting to not get hit. Mm-hmm. Michigan's DBs abused them. Like they would come up to block and a corner would come down and just lay the receiver out. Like they just got abused the whole game. It was kind of funny because it was just like, you watch these guys who are, pretty boy California receivers coming out thinking they're gonna, look nice and do their thing. And you're going into the grind zone that is Michigan, and they're coming out to hurt you. And it became pretty clear early on, they didn't really have an interest in blocking Michigan's defensive backs. So for us, we got to do the same thing. We got to get in their grill. We got to be physical with them. I don't think there's much difference between our secondary and Michigan's secondary. I think Will Johnson's the best corner in the country, but he plays very similar to how Hallman plays. So, he's Hallman. I don't think I'll say I love Hallman. I don't think he's Will Johnson, but he can function the same way. The pick 6 that Will Johnson has, Hallman can do that.
We've seen so
do that. He can do that. So I don't look at that too funky. And then their other corner was the one that they picked on the whole game. I think that Forkreen, or even if Lucas can get in there, they can put up a little bit better fight. It seemed like that side of the secondary for Michigan sort of second guessed itself a lot. Seemed to bite on things and kind of get out of position. So overall, secondary wise, I think we can hold up. The biggest difference between what Michigan did and what we have is obviously the defensive front. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, we don't have that. We just don't have anything like that. Those guys are absolute freakazoids. They're first round picks.
They got 2 of them.
Yeah, they have 2 of them. They made USC's offensive line just look stupid. I mean, USC's offensive line had no business being on the field. And it wasn't until Moss started rolling out and Riley realized that, okay, we can't stay in the pocket. We have to move the pocket because there's no chance we're going to block these guys. That's when USC started having a little bit of offensive success. Michigan's edge rush, all they did was they lined up super far outside and just sped rush the tackles. For lack of a better comparison, USC's offensive line looks like what our offensive line was last year. They seem like they don't really know what they're supposed to do when they're blocking. They're not super athletic. They're big. They seem like they tried to get them big so they could match the size of the Big Ten, but they didn't get them big, to stay athletic. Like, I don't think that's how naturally they should be. And you could kind of tell. I mean, they got ran around, they got ran by, like they were whiffing on blocks. And some of it was because Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant are awesome. But some of it was because they were just missing on blocks and they were just out of position. And so I think that for us, the key to this game is, can we get pressure with 4?
Yes.
Because one thing that Miller Moss is really good at is against the blitz. In fact, 2 of his touchdowns were off of blitz plays.
Yep.
Because, that's where he's very good. He sees a guy coming. He's well coached. He knows what he's doing. A guy comes. There should be an open guy in that section of the field. Throw it there. And it works. And that's what he did incredibly well against Michigan. That's where they had a lot of success. The other thing is, can we stop the run? We've struggled to do that all season. Here's the other thing I'll say about USC's line. They're about the same size as South Dakota's line, ironically enough. And I think that in the run game, watching both all 22s, both the USC one and Wisconsin's, the South Dakota one a couple weeks ago, I think South Dakota is better at run blocking than USC is. And I think I don't want to say it's not particularly close, but USC should be able to block better for a Power 4 team, is all I'm going to say about that, especially in the run game. Can we stop them is the question. I don't know, because we've struggled to stop the run all season. We've been having a lot of talk about 3-3-5, 2-4-5, 4-2-5, 4-3-3-4, whatever. Who cares? I think the key to being a good defense in modern college football is, can you consistently get pressure with 4 players? Doesn't matter who they are, as long as it's consistent, you can get pressure with 4. Can you stop the run with 6 guys and an overhang, or can you for sure stop the run with 7 guys? If you can do those 2 things, you're going to have a good defense. 2-4-5 under Leonard, we ran that when it was 3rd and 8, and that's when we got our best pass rushers in, and it worked incredibly effectively. We did not run that when a team came out in 13 personnel and tried to run the ball. We never ran it in that. That's not our default. That's not our base defense when a team comes out running to run the ball. And so that's where my issues with it have been. But going back to that, Michigan did a tremendous job of getting pressure with just one-on-one matchups. 4 down, 5 down. They ran a lot of bear front. When they were able to do those things, like, they got a lot of pressure. And so can we replicate that? And that's where, the question mark for me is, I don't know. Because if Miller Moss has time and he's not harried, the receivers that they have are good enough to break open on the scramble. I mean, think about it. That's all they did last year with Caleb Williams, is break open on scramble plays. That's where USC is dangerous. Michigan didn't give them time to do that. That's why Michigan is able to shut them down so easily. And I think we can shut them down right off the line of scrimmage too. But if they're running around, if Moss is running around undisturbed in the backfield and those receivers have time to work open, that's where we're going to have problems.
So here's my internal frustration with this. And I agree with you, by the way. I don't really care how you do it. If you're in a 4-2-5 or a 2-4-5 or a 3-3-5, you got to be able to get pressure without blitzing consistently. Blitzing has to be an augmentation to your defense. It can't be the base way you're trying to get pressure, because good offenses are going to slice you up. I think Tressel's in a tough spot here, right? Because I think he knows he generally can't get pressure with 4. Quite frankly, I think that's probably the answer. Even against a mediocre offensive line, I hope I'm wrong. I don't think we can consistently do that, because I think we've seen issues doing that. So I think he knows if he's going to get pressure, he probably has to blitz. He has to try to scheme some stuff up. Maybe he can scheme up a free rusher here and there. That occasionally happens, but you're not going to live off that against decent offenses that have been prepared. So he's either going to have to blitz more than he wants to and then open himself up for, to your point, Miller Moss has a passer rating over 100 against blitzes this year. Or he's going to have to live with the fact that we're just not going to blitz. We're not going to get there. We're going to try to play cloud coverage and see if he can dink and dunk his way down the field. I think that's the spot he's in. I don't think there's a great answer for Tressel, is my point. And unless you think I'm wrong there, I don't think we have the personnel to get pressure.
I 100% agree. I mean, again, watching USC against Michigan had an advantage that we don't have. We don't have that advantage. And quite frankly, watching Michigan's second team, they cycled their D tackles a lot, and that's probably to keep them fresh at the end of the game. That's how they won the game at the end. Their second defense looked a lot like what our first defense does, quite frankly. And that's where USC had a lot of success. That's where they were able to get, 1 or 2 guys just slightly out of position, and they got that long run against Michigan. They had, I think, maybe 90 yards rushing. 80 of it was on that touchdown run. They didn't even try to run after the first quarter. Right. You look at where our weaknesses are. It's that interior defensive line. Now, I will say this, 100% USC is not Alabama's line at all, and we did okay against the run, considering who we were playing in Alabama. Right. Mm-hmm. And so if we can improve on that, if we can improve on Milroe, by the way, and that was with Milroe, who, it's so funny. I just got to make this aside that they used Orgy to replicate Milroe in the Michigan practice prior to the Rose Bowl last year. They are not even remotely similar. And Milroe is so much better. Yep. I say it like that, but Milroe is infinitely better. And Milroe is infinitely better than Miller Moss too. It's not even close. But that's besides the point. Our difficulty is going to be our pass rush versus their offensive line. I think they're going to struggle to run the ball. I don't think that USC is really built to run the ball. Quite frankly, I don't think that they're going to have much success rushing in the conference. I think USC is an 8-4 team at best. Like, they're not great. After watching them versus Michigan, again, Michigan's a team that had one card to play, and it was just run the ball. That's all they could do. Defensively, they were good, but they're gettable. You could see it. And they got manhandled by Texas. Like, that wasn't even a game. And so, Michigan is not the greatest team in the world. And USC looked like your average Big Ten mid-level team. They did not look impressive to me, and so that's where I think, again, can we get to the quarterback? Because that's been our struggle all season. And in fairness to the critiques of our program, we've struggled to do that against the weaker teams on our schedule so far, let alone in Alabama. So can we get to Miller Moss? Can we disrupt the game plan that way? If we can find a way to do that and remain strong on the back end, then I think we got a really, really good shot of winning this game. But I think for me personally, that's the big mismatch in this game that I think gives USC enough edge that I think they will beat us in this game.
Let me ask you this. If you had to choose one, like if our assumptions are mostly correct, where we both kind of agree we're going to struggle to get pressure with 4, would you sit back and make Moss kind of dink and dunk you, or would you send extra pressure and just say, I pray we hold up on the back end. Let's send the 6th guy.
Honestly, I think you get about the same result. And here's why I think that. It's Miller Moss is the second highest adjusted completion percentage against blitz in the conference. The first highest being Dylan Gabriel, who's like a 8th-year senior who knows every single offense and defense in the game. He's been playing forever. So, but he's number 2. And when you're blitzing, and if we blitz, we have to get home. It wasn't like Michigan didn't blitz. They blitzed a lot. And when they blitzed, they tended to get home a lot. They made that offensive line. They made that offensive line look worse than Alabama did versus us. Like, they made them look stupid. And, they were able to get home on their blitzes. So if we do blitz and we can get home, great. That's what we need to do, because Miller Moss is not going to break out of the pocket. Like, if we can get him in the pocket, he's toast, right? He's honestly about as athletic as Braedyn Locke, full all things considered. In fact, if you'd have slapped Locke on the back of his jersey and put him in the Michigan game, most people would think that was Braedyn Locke playing. Like, that's what he looked like. He looked exactly like Braedyn Locke. But if we don't get home, he'll kill us. He'll absolutely shred us to pieces if we don't get home. And that will result probably in blown plays. Maybe we get home half the time. Maybe he's able to shred us and he's able to score mid-20s in points. You flip that over. If we don't send anybody, if we just rush 3, drop 8, he's a smart enough quarterback. He'll have time in the pocket. He'll be able to find someone. A guy like a Branch will probably be able to break into a zone or bust open after enough time given with him in the pocket that they'll be able to potentially dink and dunk us. Now, he'll make some mistakes. He'll not necessarily make all the plays. But again, I think that gets you a score of like a mid-20s score for USC. Yeah. So I think it's kind of pick your poison. If I had to choose one, I would probably just try to rush 4, and I would try to just mix up where the 4th is coming from each time and sort of change up, my man and zone coverage schemes from time to time. But that's how I would do it. I wouldn't, unless there was like a very clear advantage of like bringing more than that, I would probably just do something like that.
Yeah, I agree. That's where I'm at too. I would rush 4, try to mix it up a little bit, occasionally send the 5th off an edge somewhere. But that's where I'd be too. We're going to take one more quick break, come back with game predictions, just some final thoughts. And our Wisconsin fans, have they kind of maybe given up on this thing a little too early? That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel remains the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network for a reason. They are fast, simple, easy, incredible user interface. The GUI's great. Again, always do it responsibly. We always say that. We always preach that. But it is a fun way to spice up your weekend. Baseball playoffs are coming up, right? Huge time in sports. NFL's going on. College football's going on. Basketball's not far down the pike either. It is a great time to be a sports fan and have some fun over at FanDuel.com. And right now, they have a great offer. If you bet $5, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. But just by placing your first $5 bet over at FanDuel.com. Go over to FanDuel.com. Great new offer again. $200 bonus bets guaranteed, placing that $5 bet. FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, let's get back into the show with Curtis. Finish this up. Talk a little game predictions here. Let's start there. What is your prediction for the game?
Yeah, so I feel a lot better about this game going into it after watching Michigan last week. Initially preseason we talked about USC, we talked about Bama, and one of the things I said about USC is I don't think they're better. I think their defense has improved. I think their offense is going to regress. One thing I'll say, watching that game back, if they had Caleb Williams, they might have won that game against Michigan. The reason they were in that game at all is not because they fought back and persevered. It's because Michigan made blatantly dumb mistakes, and it was pretty clear. I mean, the touchdown they had to put it within 3 was because Michigan played man coverage with no safety, and for some reason a corner decided to blitz, and there was a guy wide open with no one anywhere. So it's like those are the kind of dumb things that Michigan did that kept USC in that game, quite frankly, on top of the fact that they literally couldn't throw the ball at all in any way. So, USC is exactly kind of who I thought they'd be at the beginning of the season. I don't think that they're going to have a particularly great season. They'll probably be bowl. They're going to make a bowl, and they'll probably be 7-5, 8-4. But they're not a team that is ready for a college football or berth or anything like that. A college football playoff berth. At the same time, we have a lot of issues of our own too. I'm not over here saying we're so great, we're going to beat the shit out of this team because we watched all the film and all these things. That's not what I'm saying. There's a lot of things we need to work on. There's a lot of things we're hampered by and not able to do. We didn't improve as much as I think we thought in the offseason. And so going into this game, I think the key matchup for us is, again, going back to our defensive front. Can we get pressure on Moss? If we can, great. I think we have a really good chance of winning this game. If we can't, we're kind of toast. And then on the flip side, on the offense, can we run the ball? Are we able to find something with the running backs? And again, I think it's the running backs at this point. It's not on the offensive line. The offensive line is doing what they're supposed to do. Can we find something in the running game? Because if we can, and we can force USC to commit to stopping the run, we can hit something in the RPO pass game with Locke, because Locke is a guy who can move the sticks. So for me, I think that we come out of this game. I do think we lose. I think we cover. I think it's a game where, it's a closer game. I think we put up a lot better offensive fight right out the gate that maybe people expected. I think we're able to drum up a little bit against USC's offense. I think Lincoln Riley is a good play coordinator. I think he's able to make some things happen and kind of make some adjustments that maybe down the road we just don't have enough to consistently get to Miller Moss. He's able to make some plays, have a great game, stand in the pocket, make some good throws to some guys that break open after a while, and they end up beating us like a 27-20 or like a 31-21. Just because I just don't think we're quite there yet. And full disclosure, I don't think that's a bad game for us. I think that proves that if we play a game like that, hey, we can hang with a team that's got, some advantages talent-wise and is able to do some things where we're weak against, but we know what our problems are, and these are things we need to work on the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's interesting. I agree with you on 2 points you just made there. The show I just did, I talked about either players or groups that need to step up, and running backs is like number one on the list. Like you have to step up. You have to hit the holes harder. You have to hold onto the ball. You have to be more consistent. You have to break some tackles. Like the running back group absolutely has to step up, because I agree with you. I don't think it's on the O-line. I think it's more on the running back. So 100% agree.
And I'll take a step back. I'll say this because I was thinking about this the other day after watching the All-22 of Michigan USC. The defense that USC reminded me of a lot from last year that we played is Illinois. I think that in terms of what they are in their skill, I mean, Illinois had some good coverage guys. They had some good linebackers. They had a stout front, with their D tackles in the middle. USC's got some good guys on that defensive line. I mean, Barry Alexander, like I said before, he's a beast. I think that's what they remind me of, which is why I think Badger fans shouldn't be as scared going into this game, because they're not elite. That's not an elite defense we're playing. We've seen defenses like this. We've played and beaten defenses like this, over the last 10, 20 years. So I'm not looking at that defense like it's some insurmountable hurdle. This is not Alabama. Alabama was significantly better than this team, it's a game where I think for us, we have a chance where we can really prove something, right? And we'll know coming out of this game, hey, what is this team moving forward? If we play well, if it's a close game, again, I think our major disadvantage is the pass rush. If we play well, I think we're going to have a good season looking at the rest of the schedule. If we don't, it could be some rough times ahead.
Yeah, I made a similar point. Like I think I want out of this game to see how I feel after the game. I want to feel better about the rushing attack. I want to feel like we can lean on teams that we should be able to lean on. And quite frankly, I think we will in this game. I also think we'll cover. It's funny, the first score you threw out was 27-20. That's kind of what I was thinking too, or like 30-20, somewhere in that range, like at 7-10. I think we lose. I thought we'd lose before the season. I picked this as a loss forever. And I don't think it's a hangover spot for USC. Like, I don't think they come back from the Michigan game and feel emotionally let down. They're not going to want to go 0-2 in the Big Ten. They're hosting a Big Ten team. The stadium's going to be sold out. They're more banged up. That's a real thing. Like health.
Well, that's my question. How much heart do they have? Because I know Fickle's yelling at the dudes. They're going to want to hit USC. So I'm curious to see, what level of heart they have, especially in their front seven, because man, they got beat up in that game.
Yeah, I think they're going to be worn down a little bit. They also lost some key dudes to injuries. Like the tight end's going to be out. They lost a receiver. I think he'll be back, but he's going to be banged up. They're down a couple guys because of that Michigan game. I just don't think it's going to be an emotional hangover. Like, I don't think they're going to come out of it's early in the season. They get to host their first Big Ten in conference game before a sold out stadium. Like, they're going to be ready to go. They're absolutely going to be ready to go, in my opinion. So But I do think USC wins. I'm right there with you on the score. I think a 27-20, a 30-20, something like in that range. He is Curtis Holland. I am Ryan Herrings. This has been Locked On Badgers. We're both a little more optimistic. Badger fans, like, it's okay. We wanted to throw a couple messages up here, Curtis. We're running out of time, but like a lot of people are in this train of thought. Line has moved to 15.5. I think it'll get worse before kickoff. Ryan, stop. Vegas is very good what they do. So please stop, because I picked Wisconsin to cover.
Fun fact, Vegas was wrong on Nebraska and USC. And those are both games that I looked at last week. And I can't bet Nebraska, Illinois, because I live in Illinois. It's just unfortunate. I was going to pick Illinois to win because I think Bielema wins those types of games. And then, like I said, USC is exactly the team I thought they were preseason. And that showed up on, this last weekend. And guess what? Vegas was wrong on both those. I don't know if people watch the games at all or, pay attention. But Vegas was wrong on both of those. Vegas can be wrong again. I think there's a lot of negative discourse around this team. And I think it's a couple things. I don't think that the improvements we thought we saw manifested so far this season. And I don't think that the reporters were necessarily wrong. There is a lot to have in this run game, and I think you saw it in camp. And you were at more camps than I was, but there's something to be had there. And you could see it on the film. Like, the looks are there. Going back to Luke Fickell's press conference today, like, they're right there. Like, the looks are right there. It's just we're not capitalizing on them. And it's for a myriad of reasons. Right. And then you look back at the defense. I mean, we knew we were going to be struggling up front. Like, we knew that was the thing we were going to see this season. And it doesn't help when we're not executing at the level we wanted to be on offense. So, this is a very, very growing pains year, and it's going to continue to be so. That said, I implore you. First of all, I remember getting a conversation about this. I've watched the Alabama game film like 3 times at this point. Most people that are talking about it have barely watched a half, and they were probably consuming a few beverages in the meantime. So I implore you to watch it back and actually get a better sense of what this team is. And then I implore you to watch some of the other teams in the Big Ten, because nobody looks that good this year in the Big Ten. I mean, most of these teams, USC doesn't look that great. Rutgers, they look like they're improved, but they're still Rutgers. They're not great. They almost lost to Virginia Tech, who's terrible. Northwestern's not good. Purdue is terrible. Iowa looks like they've improved a little bit on offense, but that defense is not an Iowa defense. Nebraska looks like the same team they were last year with a slightly better quarterback who's a freshman. Minnesota looks like Minnesota. Like, Oregon has struggled. Penn State has struggled. Like, none of these teams look good. And so at the end of the day, it's like we all got the things we got to deal with. We all got the problems we have to deal with. At the end of the day, who shows up on Saturday is going to win the game. And the one positive that I took away muddily from the Alabama game is, even though we got our ass kicked, I did not see a team that quit. The 52-21 game in Paul Chryst' second to last game, or even the 31-7 or whatever that score was in Paul Chryst' last game, compared to what I just saw, 42-10, those are different teams. Those are teams with different priorities, and those are teams with different mindsets. And it's very clear. And so that's what gives me hope that the message is getting through to the guys. They're tough players. Are they what we need them to be in order to win the conference yet? Probably not. But are they tough? Are they going to fight? Are they going to be in every game we play this year? Probably. So I feel overall okay about this season. But I think there's a lot of potential moving forward. And I do think, like I said last week, that the young guys, the freshmen, the oncoming classes we have coming in are really going to be the strength of this team moving forward.
I love it, man. That's a hell of a way to finish it off. Like I said, he is Curtis. I'm Ryan. A bunch more content coming up this week. We got some more guests coming up on Wisconsin beat SC.